This society has an addiction to patriarchy and the oppression and gender oppression. If we're not going to get our reparations, then the least the government can do is give us equal pay.
Have you ever been in an argument before? If you're watching this channel, you almost certainly have. But have you ever been in an argument where you've definitely lost, and everyone watching the argument knows you've lost, but you insist on continuing to make your point, even after you've been proven wrong? If this sounds like you, you're probably an advocate for the gender pay gap theory, the idea that women are mysteriously paid less than men simply by virtue of their gender. Of course, it's more complicated than that, and the gender pay gap has been disproven about 1 billion times here on YouTube, so I'm not going to waste your time focusing on that particular aspect. But in today's video, Now This is leaning in on intersectionality, which, as we know, is designed to target and demonize fit straight white men, and they're presenting a new angle on the wage gap. Not only are wages sexist now, but they're racist as well. That's right. Apparently, if you want to save a ton of money as a corporation, all you have to do is hire a staff of entirely black women, and you'll be well on your way to maximizing profits and conquering the world. We'll talk about this issue in today's video, and get into intersectionality as well. But first, go to the comments down below and comment what you'd like me to talk about in Saturday's video. If I end up talking about your idea, you'll get a shout out at the beginning of that video. And finally, before jumping into today's main content, let's talk quickly about your online privacy and security. While many Americans have been focused on Russia and Iran, there's a much more real and pressing foreign threat. That is, of course, the Communist Chinese. Just last month, Apple transferred the iCloud data of their Chinese users to a facility managed by a state-owned telecommunications provider, giving the Chinese government access to all of that data. And just last year, Apple removed VPN apps from their Chinese App Store, making it harder for users to circumvent firewalls and content filters. Unfortunately, countries across Europe are following the Chinese example, with Germany introducing strict new laws restricting internet free speech, and the UK attempting to follow suit. From China to Germany to the UK and the US, you need to protect your online privacy from state and corporate tyranny, which is why I recommend Virtual Shield's VPN technology. They have a strict no data logging policy that guarantees ultimate privacy and anonymity for their users. This month, Virtual Shield is giving away a free 1-year subscription to their flagship product IdentiSafe, a microphone and webcam blocking technology for Windows with every annual VPN purchased. Get both products now for a full year for one great price. Stay protected online and get Virtual Shield. They're the only company that I use and trust.
Black women have been forced to work in the United States since before its inception. I'm talking before Thanksgiving was a thing. 400 years later, we're still working. And if we're not going to get our reparations, then the least the government can do is give us equal pay.
Government this, government that. The foundational misunderstanding that so many on the left have, this idea that government decides who gets paid what or how the economy is planned, is really staggering. Let's break this statement down. Black women may have been here for 400 years, which would be, 1618? I don't know if that's true or not, but let's just say that it is. Even so, white men have been on the North American continent for a lot longer. Norse settlements have been discovered in Canada, dating as far back as the year 1000, and Columbus was the first European to travel the New World and record information about his travels. And beginning in the 16th century, European exploration and expansion into the New World was well underway. It's important to note that only Western nations were ever able to build fleets, navigate, and conquer any amount of the New World. No African nor Asian nations were ever capable of the transnational colonialism and conquest that Western nations were. That's not something to be ashamed of either. It's something to be proud of. Oh, and finally, it's painfully obvious what she's trying to do here. She's trying to draw a comparison between when Africans were enslaved to the present day. I haven't seen the full video yet, but let's take a bet. I wager she'll probably make at least one more reference to slavery before this video is over. Let's continue.
But our pay gap is just getting wider. In 2017, it took Black women an extra 212 days to earn what the average white man made the previous year.
Yeah, citation needed. Actually, no, I don't need a citation because I already know how they arrived at this figure. You've probably heard how feminists calculate the pay gap already by now, so I'm not going to bore you with the same explanation you've already heard a million times. But here's the extremely brief version for those that need a refresher. They're calculating black women's earnings by adding up all of the money made by black women, dividing it by the number of black women, and getting a result. Then they're comparing that number to white men's earnings, dividing that number by all white men, and getting a result. Black women aren't forced to work 212 extra days a year to earn the same amount of money per hour as a white man. No. But because black women tend to earn less than white men, on average, in order for them to take home the same amount of money every year, they'd have to work that many more days, on the aggregate.
So as if we weren't already behind, this year we had to add another week of work to catch up. This society has an addiction to patriarchy and the oppression and gender oppression.
Sometimes that gender oppression is racialized.
Boom. Here we go, white man. It's time to make you feel guilty for racially oppressing, mind you, these poor women. Of course, the racial pay gap has nothing to do with supposed white privilege or racism. It has more to do with economic choices, family planning choices, and it also has to do with IQ. Women tend to take breaks in their careers to stay home and raise children. Thus, their opportunities for advancement higher into the corporate world are limited because they tend to take more extended breaks from the job to raise kids. That makes you less likely to get promoted. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Women should be taking time off to raise their children. It's better for the child and society as a whole. Additionally, women are often less competitive, meaning they're less likely to seek advancement, etc. You've heard these arguments by now. But since we're talking specifically about black women, we also need to consider the prevalence of out-of-wedlock birth rates in the black community. Approximately 7 in 10 black kids are born to single mothers. 7 out of 10. That is a disastrously high number, and it helps explain the total lack of stability in the black community. When 70% of black kids are born without fathers in the home, women are going to have to take more time away from their jobs, if they have them, to raise these kids. And that's going to mean going on welfare or taking food stamps. Oftentimes, these women end up taking 4 years off of work, only going back once the kids are in school. And even then, most can only work a part-time job because of the time it takes to be a parent. Is the white man forcing 70% of black women to get pregnant out of wedlock? No. Is the white man forcing these women out of the workforce? No. By their own choices, they are setting themselves up to be in positions where they are not eligible to earn as much money and have limited career prospects. That's on them. That's not oppression.
And when it is, we have to look at the ways in which there's this compounded reduction of opportunity, suppression of opportunity.
This suppression starts early. Many black girls are not given the same level of investment as their white peers. They instead receive a different type of attention in the classroom.
They, in schools, are not given the same degree of leadership opportunities as their counterparts. They are not included in athletic activities or other extracurricular activities at the same rate as their counterparts of other racial and ethnic groups.
Perhaps they don't sign up for those things because they simply are not interested. The leftist media treats blacks as if they have no agency to do anything for themselves. If black kids want to sign up for these programs, they certainly can and are allowed to, but it's not evidence of discrimination if they don't.
All of that is part of how we build capacity for participation in the workforce. All of that is about what makes us competitive in other spaces.
I remember one of the most painful memories for me was when I was 12 years old, and in the 7th grade, my vice principal made me take out my braids. You know, a hairstyle that the administration felt was a bad representation of the school.
Well, obviously, this experience didn't affect you too much because now, as an adult, you're choosing to wear your hair straight. What's the problem here again?
Part of my other work years ago was to examine the potential for differential treatment among women in the Bay Area who were looking for employment. And we found that certainly women with a criminal conviction history were less likely to receive a favorable response from potential employers than those without a criminal conviction history. But for black women, they were the only group of women who it didn't really matter if they had a criminal conviction history or not, because there was this prevailing consciousness that believed them to be likely to have one.
Yeah, I highly doubt that. If this is true, show us the numbers proving it. Show us the numbers that show black women with criminal records have the same likelihood as getting a callback as black women with clean records. They can't show those records because they don't exist. People with criminal backgrounds are almost always less likely to get jobs than those without. The other angle here is that black women are more likely than women of other races to be convicted criminals. I don't have to walk you through this at this point. You get it. But the FBI numbers speak for themselves.
And so the differential ways in which employers interacted with them certainly had a lasting impact. And so the conversation about criminalization certainly cannot be divorced from conversations about equal pay, particularly when we're talking about black women and other women of color who are disproportionately impacted by the criminal and juvenile legal system.
Disproportionately incarcerated because they commit more crime, lady. Think about what is being advocated for here for a second. This woman wants to make it a law that a black woman with a criminal record has to get the same job as you, a white guy with a clean background, and then you have to get paid the same because all people are exactly equal in every single way. It doesn't matter who's more qualified, who's a better candidate, who's a better worker, who has better references. Nope. What they're advocating for is affirmative action on steroids, a set of policies that would require employers to hire people with criminal convictions for jobs they probably can't do just because they're racial minorities. This is not a recipe for a productive economy or healthy race relations in society.
So it's not all bad news. Black women recently became the most educated group in America. We have 68% of all associate degrees, 71% of all master's degrees awarded to Black students.
That doesn't mean you're the most educated group in America. It means that of the Black students graduating from those programs, the majority are women. We know that colleges do a great deal to recruit and pass Black students, regardless of how intelligent or capable they actually are. Affirmative action has a definite effect on college admissions, and white and Asian students are routinely discriminated against by admissions departments that prefer lower-scoring Black students over higher-scoring white and Asian students. And by the way, if you are the most educated group in America, why aren't you the highest-earning group in America? Getting a piece of paper from some university is cool and all, but if you can't use that paper to make any money, what's the point? Going through the motions and looking like a successful person does not make you a successful person. It's like putting on a suit and expecting that makes you a businessman. Perhaps it would be wise to spend less time and energy going through the college degree machine and spending more time finding other ways to improve your economic situations in your communities. Like having a stable family, marrying the fathers of your children, etc.
So more of us are coming for those top positions and salaries, and we aren't willing to work an extra 7 months just to make what the guy in our position made the year before. It's time that we acknowledge that a fight for generic equal pay would only benefit white women.
I love this. I do. I love it. The left is purity spiraling, and white feminists are going to be left out in the cold by the POC they tried so hard to defend and be allies for. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, they still called me a white racist.
Black women make 63 cents to the dollar, while Latina and Native American women make even less than that. To truly band together, women and men must talk openly about salaries and privileges. We're not all going to be fortunate enough to stumble across our colleagues' pay stubs. # Molly from Insecure. Transparency is key. It's time to demand more. As an employee, as a consumer, and most importantly, as a registered voter. You might also want to consider unionizing. Studies show that Black women are 30% more likely to get paid if they join a union.
This is just great. It's fantastic. Despite being apparently highly educated, this woman still doesn't understand how average salaries are calculated, and that women aren't literally making 63 cents on the dollar that men are making. There are simply fewer women in high-earning positions, meaning the average salary for women is lower than it is for men. And here's where I'll break from some of the so-called anti-SJW liberalist YouTubers. There are some women that are only happy in an office environment, and I think that's the vast minority. I think the vast majority of women would be happier and healthier staying at home. I think more women should be mothers raising their children. It's okay to be a stay-at-home mom, and despite all of the egalitarian, you go girl propaganda we see nowadays in the media, encouraging women to get out there and start running in the rat race too, that's not a blueprint for a healthy or functional society. The two genders are, of course, different. Historically, women have stayed at home raising the children and being homemakers, while men go out in the world and earn a living. This has been a productive, pro-social, advantageous relationship for thousands of years. And it's only really been within the last 100 years that big business and the capitalists have convinced us that no, both the woman and the man should work, because that allows them, at the top, to drive down wages and pay men less than they otherwise would. Women in the workplace has been a massive victory for the globalist financial elites and the rootless transnational capitalists that put profit above all else. Think about it. By doubling the size of the workforce, they've increased competition for jobs, meaning wages can fall as a result. Modern women view freedom as the ability to work 50 hours a week at a soul-crushing job and come home to an empty apartment. Well, to them, a lifetime raising happy children together with a husband in a loving home is the apotheosis of slavery and oppression. That sounds pretty backwards to me. Instead of 63 cents, perhaps women would be more satisfied earning none at all.